The book of Daniel has a curious feature that most people reading in English don't know about. About half of the book is preserved in Aramaic rather than in Hebrew. So what's Aramaic, the imperial language of ancient Babylon and Persia, doing in the so-called Hebrew Bible? Well, a simple answer would be that two documents, a series of stories in Aramaic and a series of apocalyptic visions in Hebrew, were written separately, perhaps by two different authors. But the simple answer doesn't tell the whole story. The linguistic seams in Daniel don't line up with the seams in the content itself. What this tells us is that the last person who had their editorial hands on the book before it was more or less set was bilingual and used the two languages creatively with literary intent in order to preserve the book as a bilingual document rather than polishing it into a monolingual text. But why would an author or a redactor or a redactional author choose to utilize the imperial language like this? There are many theories, of course, but the one most convincing to me is that this bilingualism or code switching was part of a discourse of resistance against the marginalizing power of empire. We can take Daniel 3 as an example. This story about the 3 Jewish men who refused to participate in the imperial cult and about their divine rescue from incineration is told in Aramaic. The idea that this is a use of language as a tool for resistance is supported by other features of the story. The great Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar is satirically lampooned in his characterization, while the 3 Jewish men stand toe-to-toe with him in a dialogical tit-for-tat that's present even in the grammar itself. The inclusion of this narrative in the Aramaic section of Daniel is a way, I think, to claim an equal linguistic status with the oppressor. This story claims, in part by its use of Aramaic, that no matter how marginalized the Jewish people are because of their political context, they derive their status and dignity from God, and therefore may courageously resist the powerful, no matter the odds of success and no matter the outcome. The language of resistance can be a powerful force. This is the shore of the Ohio River at the northwest corner of Louisville, Kentucky. There are no plaques or markers around here, but local lore says that this very spot was a crossing point for the Underground Railroad, where dozens of African Americans traveled from slavery here in Kentucky to freedom right across the river in New Albany, Indiana. Conductors on the Underground Railroad, like Harriet Tubman, sometimes used the lyrics of their spiritual songs to communicate the language of resistance against the system of slavery. Songs like Michael Row the Boat Ashore or Wade in the Water use imagery of crossing the Jordan River to communicate multiple meanings, crossing the river to freedom in this life or in the next, but never accepting slavery as their final status. Marginalized people often find ways to put their resistance into words. The practice of listening for that language in ancient texts like Daniel nuances our understanding of how such documents functioned in their own historical setting of systemic oppression. But even beyond this, God willing, such an approach will help attune our ears to the voices of the marginalized in our own context, to hear the language of resistance in their songs and in their stories.